In continuation of my Eminence in Shadow episode breakdown series, Season 2 Episode 6 is titled John Smith, and we'll be seeing just how much damage the counterfeit money has done to the market of the Midgard Kingdom, along with what Mitsugoshi and the major corporate alliance are doing to stop the circulation. As usual, the anime did make some creative changes to certain aspects from the light novel, so I will be discussing about those along with breaking down the episode. It goes without saying, if you haven't watched the episode yet, here's a spoiler warning just in case. If you enjoyed this cut content / breakdown video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel as well, it really helps. Now then, episode 6 will be adapting chapter 6 and a portion of the epilogue from volume 3 of the light novel. It continues directly from where episode 5 stopped after the Team Shadow Garden sent to deal with John Smith has been defeated, and they are now delivering their report to Alpha and Gamma back in Mitsugoshi. This entire interaction pretty much followed the light novel, even the part where number 666 wanting another chance to fight John Smith and then arguing with her team leader 664 were the same as well. As they were arguing and having finished reporting on their mission, 665 would drag both her teammates away. Afterwards, Alpha and Gamma would send Delta to hunt down John Smith, and it's here we get some anime original scenes. We learn that Zeta and number 559 have apparently been sent by Alpha to investigate something related to the Cult of Diablos. However, because this wasn't mentioned in the light novel, it's unknown what they were investigating, but if I had to take a guess, it might be connected to the story that will take place after the John Smith arc, which involves the Orana Kingdom. Also, I found it wholesome that Alpha wants to quickly resolve the counterfeit situation so that they can finally spend time with Shadow, which honestly makes the betrayal that comes later in the episode even more gut-wrenching. Moving on, we see John Smith guarding the train, but the episode did not mention that a few days had passed since Mitsugoshi last sent anyone to deal with him and he was getting bored of just waiting. That's when he sensed the arrival of Delta. Regarding his encounter with Delta, there were some creative changes made to the scene. In the light novel, when Delta approaches John Smith, she immediately discovered his true identity despite him intentionally taking multiple baths and covering himself in large amount of perfume to hide his own scent. However, in the anime, when she approaches him, a fight broke out between them, which was an anime original sequence. The fight was done quite well, showcasing Delta's insane combat instinct and how she easily dodges the steel wires of John with just her intuition. She even blew apart the train carriage, understanding that the wires would need surfaces to connect with. But despite that, Delta still couldn't defeat John and she was buried under the debris. As he was preparing to do his super secret elite agent monologue, Delta realizes it was her boss and her reaction was adorable. And I found it funny that after he was discovered, he changes back to his usual Sid voice because that's how he normally talks to his doggo. Anyways, Delta saying she wants to report back to Alpha and him trying to stop her by explaining his super secret elite agent mission happened in a similar fashion to the light novel, although the episode did remove a minor part where he unintentionally grabbed her tail. Also, it was cute that he was giving her head pats the entire time and her tail wagging with greater intensity when he promises to give her a reward was cute as well. And seeing him trying to make sure Delta doesn't misunderstand his reward, knowing she will likely request something excessive definitely adds to the humor. With that, John sends Delta away to the Lawless City to hunt Juggernaut in the Black Tower. There was even a post-credit scene of the destroyed Black Tower, and also in the spin-off Kagejitsu, Delta was shown to have decapitated Juggernaut at the end. I honestly feel bad for him, a victim of cis Chunibyo fantasies. Then going back to Mitsugoshi, the sequence of Gamma informing Alpha about Delta's fate, and also the counterfeit money situation worsening was similar to what happened in the light novel, although the anime did lose some of the emotional weight for this particular scene. So in the light novel, Alpha was initially filled with sorrow after seeing the scraps of fur from Delta's tail, but realizing how frail she sounded and having to comfort Gamma, she manages to compose herself. Furthermore, the internalized thoughts of Alpha regretting not listening to the warnings of 666 about John Smith and her decision of sending Delta to handle him alone, and how she has always prepared herself emotionally for someone to eventually fall were removed as well. Personally, it would have been nice if the episode kept these moments because it actually provides some decent character perspective for Alpha, like showing more of a compassionate side along with the professionalism she has as the second in command of Shadow Garden. Having said that, there were also some changes made to the interaction between Getan and the cult's messengers. In the light novel, after learning that the counterfeit money currently in circulation did not belong to the cult, Getan had assumed it was done by Mitsugoshi. He believed they must have seen through their plans and were now expediting the credit collapse because he assumed they have already accumulated enough capital to survive and they are now just waiting for the MCA to fall to gain a complete monopoly over the marketplace. However, in the episode, instead of assuming it was Mitsugoshi, Getan learned that it was a man named John Smith who was behind the counterfeit money. Furthermore, Gato would kill the messengers as well and orders Gato to use the MCA's influence to impose a nationwide search and blockade to find the source. Those were mainly the differences, and the only aspect they kept was how the cult still hasn't moved their assets to a safe place and they will be suffering severe losses from this credit crisis. Now continuing from that, we will get another anime original scene involving Alexia and Iris meeting, which does not really have much plot significance other than to show Alexia's character growth. However, I did enjoy seeing Alexia trying her best to gain the knowledge and skills needed to overcome her own problems, but it seems that her resolve has angered and hurt her sister's ego, which not surprisingly aligns with the personality of Iris. And if you know what happens to the Midgard sisters later in the light novel, this scene in the episode was slightly hinting at the start of their declining relationship. Also, nerdy Alexia looks quite good, don't you agree? In any case, the sequence with Beta delivering her regular report to Shadow was somewhat similar to the light novel, but again with some minor differences. For example, the anime added some comedy into this scene, like how he was freezing because he intentionally left his balcony door open to look more cooler, quite literally. They also made Shadow taking notes into a running gag throughout the episode, but he was mostly just writing nonsense. Another change was Beta informing Shadow about Delta, namely Beta explaining her own relationship with Delta and how she always viewed Delta like a little sister was removed. Furthermore, Shadow's reaction towards the news was different as well. In the light novel, he treated it more casually, whereas in the episode, he was visibly nervous about them finding Delta. Although in both versions, he did say the same thing about how Delta went to a better place. That said, I did find it funny that Beta's line about the counterfeit money causing inflation and how it has reached a point that it must be addressed at the state level will be stolen by Shadow later in the episode. And Shadow showing Beta his notes being written with 5 different languages was quite on brand with his character as well. He even gives her a note to decipher, and if you did not know, the note actually explains his true intentions. But anyways, in the scene that followed, Sid was in his John Smith persona guarding the train again, and his interaction with the MCA agents went quite differently in the episode as compared to the light novel. For context, the MCA has mobilized all their forces to search for John Smith, and in the light novel they did eventually find a carriage carrying the counterfeit money, but unsurprisingly they were quickly dispatched by John Smith. As for how it happened in the episode, he doesn't actually fight any MCA agents, instead they're only blocking the train tracks and it was easily destroyed by him. The light novel version was definitely more interesting and impactful, as we see the extent the MCA is willing to go in order to stop John Smith. With that said, John's encounter with Alpha somewhat followed the light novel, but it was more watered down and a few minor details that made the fight more impactful were removed as well. First off, after he dealt with the MCA agents, instead of him sensing Alpha's presence nearby like we see in the light novel, she would immediately attack him on the train. Also, Alpha's first attack in the episode was only blocked by him, whereas for the light novel, her attack can miss because he was moving at such high speeds that he left behind an afterimage. They would continue their battle, and the episode did retain the part where Alpha masterfully analyzes John's attack patterns and being able to notice his thinner wires were hidden between thicker wires so that she can easily dodge his attacks. Also, in a similar fashion to the light novel, the episode will show how Alpha discovered the true identity of John Smith through the way he moves and the dexterity of his technique. Following this revelation of Shadow's betrayal and not wanting to be a hindrance anymore, Alpha begins to charge her magic, and it's here we see the misformed technique that Beta had learned from her encounter with the Blood Queen Elizabeth being utilized by Alpha, and it seems that her mastery of this technique was quite high because she could turn specific parts of her body into mist similar to Elizabeth. She even managed to damage John numerous times just like in the light novel. Unfortunately, John is still stronger and he simply blasted Alpha away with a shockwave because she had no mass in this state, but it was still impressive nonetheless, being one of the few people able to damage him in a real battle. Additionally, I have to commend the voice actress for Alpha because you can just hear the anguish in her voice after finding out about Shadow's betrayal, but their fight still lacks some of the emotional impact from the light novel because it actually gives a better insight on Alpha's mental state as compared to the episode. To explain, even though she thinks that Shadow has truly betrayed them and was responsible for the supposed death of Delta, she was still begging for him to not abandon her. I actually found it to be quite disturbing and heartbreaking how much devotion she has for Shadow, because it seems that regardless of the abuse, she still doesn't want to leave him, almost like an addiction which wasn't really emphasized in the episode. And I honestly feel bad for Alpha because in the light novel, after ending the fight, Shadow even praised her for how strong she has become, and I was quite disappointed they did not keep this part in the episode. This tiny detail actually adds so much to their relationship, and that Shadow does care about Alpha and the girls, whereas here in the episode he just feels like a cold and uncaring sociopath. Nevertheless, after the fight, John meets with Yukime again, and they have accumulated a large amount of gold thanks to their counterfeit money, but the episode doesn't mention that they are now removing all traces of their involvement, including tearing down the counterfeit factory. It was also here that John repeats the lines he stole from Beta. Apparently in the light novel, he did this because he wanted to impress Yukime with how knowledgeable he was. Furthermore, the part where Yukime deciding to liquidate the real MCA bills she accumulated in person, and John questioning her reasoning wasn't shown in the episode. This was actually why Yukime decided to share a backstory with him like we see in the episode, and the contents of the story pretty much followed the light novel, although a minor portion about her first meeting with Getan when he came to rescue her after a village was attacked did get removed. To summarize what Yukime said, basically after the hero Shiva had fallen, many of the stronger Tiranthrop clans started to fight among each other with the weaker ones being dragged into the conflict, and to survive, the Spirit Fox clan would form an alliance with the Great Wolf clan by having Yukime and Getan marry each other. However, before their marriage, their clan was apparently caught in a conflict between two major Tiranthrop clans, with Getan and Yukime being the only survivors. It was then revealed that Getan had pledged his loyalty to the cult and wanted to use the Tears of Diablos to make their people stronger, but because Yukime's mother rejected his proposal, the others refused as well, so Getan blamed her for the deaths of their people, and he was the one that actually killed Yukime's mother. After this revelation, he forced Yukime to take the pills, but she refused, so he attacked her as well, resulting in the scars on her back. And what happened next wasn't actually shown in the episode, but Sid in his stylish Bandit Slayer disguise would attack Getan, and in addition to that, he was the one that healed Yukime's injuries. But continuing on, this was why Yukime vowed to exact her revenge on Getan by taking everything away from him, and we learned that she started working as a battlefield prostitute and worked her way up to eventually becoming one of the monarchs within the lawless city. So with that explained, I really enjoyed the way the episode adapted Yukime's backstory and the aesthetic choice they went with. But yeah, this was all the differences and cut content found in episode 6. It was a decent episode, but they definitely could have done a lot better, especially the fight between Alpha and John Smith. So what are your thoughts on the episode? Did you like it, or do you also think they could have done better? Feel free to leave your answers in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this episode breakdown and cut content video, don't forget to leave a like or subscribe to the channel and hit that notification button as well for more content like this in the future. Thanks for watching, and as always, stay safe everyone.